The Bread and Butter Collective is a collection of hospitality professionals working together to help strengthen our industry to build strong culture, community, and sustainability.
I'm Calen McNeil.
And I'm Sam Jones. And this is the Bread and Butter Podcast.
Hello, and welcome to the Bread and Butter Podcast. Solo today. Sam is away for the day, so he's moonlighting, which I'm hoping to make up for his awesome personality. I don't know if I'll be able to do that, but you guys can judge. We're excited today. We're doing another one of our origin stories. We've got Marc Morrison from Brasserie Calen joining us. He has a deep-rooted history in the hospitality sector. A staple signature restaurant in Victoria, which I'm proud patron of. I go there often, and the food is fantastic. It's been around a long time. I think it's going on 18 years or 19 years or something like that. So he has a lot of experience, and I'd like to welcome Marc Morrison. Welcome to our podcast.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Oh, it's good to see you. How are things going overall?
Overall, they're good. We were closed a lot in the last 18 months or so, but we plowed through it, and business almost seems back to normal.
Oh, that's fantastic. Did you feel any pressure to open versus close when others were open? And, how did that kind of mental gymnastics go for you?
The first shutdown in particular was hard to reopen. It seemed policies were changing all the time. Whether it was the capacity or spacing and things like that were confusing, I would say, in June of last year. And we took our time. We kind of waited to see what other places were doing. I went and visited other restaurants to see, whether they're putting in barriers or plexiglass or moving tables around. And we definitely took our time reopening last year. But part of it, I did feel pressure to get open. Of course, I have staff that needed to be working,
right?
And I needed to be working.
Yeah.
But I wanted to take my time to make sure we were doing the right thing.
Do you have any regrets of that, or did it affirm your decision to wait? Just in retrospect, would you have done things differently?
No, I don't think so. I think it might have been 3 weeks for us to reopen. Part of it is that we did some cosmetic upgrades to the restaurant in that period as well, and that took a little bit longer than anticipated, whether it was refinishing the floors or touching up the paint. But no, I am glad we took our time to reopen. Fortunately, my landlord was great.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. It really helps to have a good
process.
landlord, right?
It made all the difference for us.
Yeah, definitely makes the decision decision-making tree easier when you've got that sort of taken care of, because that takes a big chunk of your expenses off the table.
Exactly. There's a chance we wouldn't have survived if it wasn't for my landlord, who he was away traveling when the pandemic hit us, and he contacted me right away and said, "I heard things are shutting down," and he said, "You've been, renting for 18 years. We'll figure things out after this is over." Yeah,
it's amazing. We had that at Zambres too, and some of the Big Wheel locations as well, with landlords that were just fantastic, and just taking that pressure off definitely makes a big difference. So
they're places that definitely scrambled because their landlords didn't even answer the phone.
Yeah,
and were forced to be open or to do takeout or something like that, or even though they couldn't do things properly, but they needed to just to survive.
Yeah, just to pay the rent, that's unfortunate. It's I think by and large the majority were good, which is good, and obviously there's different. Some are better than others. So you've been in the industry a long time. Why don't you start? Give us a bit of a background of how you started, where you came from, and from the hospitality side. I know that you did some competitive biking. I'd like to hear a little bit about that. But just tell us a little bit of a background of how you got into this industry, how you started Brasserie Calen, and then and how you got to where we are today.
I grew up in a resort town. I grew up in Jasper, Alberta. And so there was a lot of restaurant hotel work. And my first job was dishwashing in a restaurant. And then I got a job serving breakfast and lunch. And it kind of carried on from there. As I got older, I got, an evening serving job. And this is all in high school. And then I went to university in Vancouver and continued working in restaurants while I was in school. Uh, Restaurant work was pretty good for a starving student. That gave me a bit of spending cash and kept me fed through the university years. But then after university, I realized I wasn't going to be a biologist, and
that's what you took in university, like biology, science, kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Boo.
Yeah. I had dabbled with bike racing when I was a kid. I went to France when I was 16, 17 to train and race. Quickly realized that I didn't have a future in bike racing and I better go to school. But after in university, I got back into cycling a little bit. And then following school, I thought, maybe I'll give it another try. And that's what brought me to Victoria. Victoria was a hotbed, or still is a hotbed of competitive cycling. And so I moved here in 1995, and got a job at the Airy.
That was your first major job out after university in the hospitality?
Yeah, exactly. In school I started working fine dining, and so the Airy was kind of like the job I wanted to get.
Your goal.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it wasn't the job that I thought it was going to be. They were going through some changes at the time, and so I got a job. I moved to town and got a job at Vinsanto, which is where the Tapa Bar is now.
Oh my God! Wow, that's old.
And that's where I met Sean Brennan.
Was he chefing there?
He was chefing there.
Yeah.
He was helping out, kind of working as a consultant, because he was in the process of opening Cafe Brio.
Right.
With Greg and Sylvia. And so Sean, I worked with Sean there, and then Sean got me the job at Cafe Brio when Cafe Brio opened.
Wow. So now we're going, like, are we talking 1998 or 97?
Maybe, or, I would say 97, 98.
Yeah.
97 or 98.
Yeah.
It was funny, Cafe Brio, Sean had hired all the back of house staff, and Greg and Sylvia had hired all the front of house staff. And all the front of house staff had all worked together before, whether it was Herald Street Cafe or the Oak Bay Marina.
Right.
But because Sean brought me on, I was the outsider. And so everybody was friends and everybody knew each other except for me. And I was the new guy.
And how did that integration go?
I remember there were a couple of employees that I rubbed the wrong way on the first day. Yeah.
I mean, you have a very distinctive personality and a great sense of humor. Like, the dry sense of humor is probably...
Well, I mean, I know that I rubbed somebody the wrong way because she does tell me that. That's the one. That's the lady I've married now. Yeah. That's where I met my wife. Was at Cafe Brio.
Oh, that's amazing.
And that's where Sean met his wife. Was at Cafe Brio as well.
Oh, I didn't know that. That was their original meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, Trixie.
I mean, it's possible it might have been the Oak Bay Marina, but we definitely all worked there at that same period. Yeah.
Wow.
And that was a lot of fun. It was, Cafe Brio was one of the great restaurants. It was amazing at the time. There was the Oak Bay Marina and Herald Street Cafe, and that was kind of it for premium dining in the city. And Cafe Brio, especially the first few years, was, it still is, but it changed how I think what dining was like in the city.
Yeah, I would agree with that for sure. I mean, it was amazing, just a pairing like good quality ingredients. And I think the level of service is phenomenal. Greg and Sylvia, obviously, they've had, with, Herald Street and a bunch of other things they've done in the past, really kind of elevated that. And then you've got Sean, who's a pretty traditional chef, but really was focused on local ingredients and tied into the farmers early, which is basically the beginning of the food and culinary experience in Victoria that you see today, with all the, your restaurant and Zambries and, a myriad of others that are kind of chef driven, local produce focused, which I think was amazing. And it all started there, really.
Yeah.
One of the first, and they're still going, which is amazing. So from there, tell us a little bit about what happened after that. You've met your wife.
But we didn't get married right away. She moved to Scotland. I moved to Vancouver. I did the sommelier program. It was the first time it was being taught outside of George Brown College, and I thought it was a great opportunity. Again, I realized I wasn't going to be a bike racer. So while I was in Vancouver, I realized how much I loved Victoria.
Right.
And Sean had left Cafe Brio, and I kind of half jokingly told my friends, I'm going to move back to Victoria and open up a restaurant with Sean. We often got together and had dinner parties, and we definitely agreed on what we expected from a restaurant, or what we wanted a restaurant to be like. In fact, when I did move back to Victoria, I had a management job at Butchart Gardens that brought me back to the city, because I really wanted to be here. And having dinner with Sean and talking about, really came up as, wouldn't it be great if there was a French bistro we could go to?
Yeah.
Somewhere for steak frites and duck confit. We weren't necessarily talking about opening a restaurant, but we talked about the ideal restaurant.
And that was the beginning of the concept, of the idea of doing it. How far along, how long did you guys have those chats before it started to actually get some legs?
It wasn't long. It was maybe 2 years.
That's not bad.
If that. I worked one season at Butchart Gardens, or one season, and then it was like a few months later that Sean called me and said, the old Met Bistro location is up for lease.
Wow. And that's actually significant, because I'm pretty sure Sean worked at the old Met Bistro.
He did. Yeah, he worked at the Met Bistro. Yeah. In fact, one of my longtime staff, Amy, she worked at the Met Bistro as well.
Amy. Oh, that's amazing.
But so Sean and I signed a lease in October of 2001, and we had no financing, no business plan.
I remember that.
We had nothing, yeah, and we signed the lease. Sean was working at Spinnaker's.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And I was unemployed at the time. I just finished my job at Butchart Gardens,
which is always a great way to start a business venture.
Yeah, it was a crazy start. The first day, I got the keys to the restaurant, and Sean was at work, and I just sat. It'd been a Vietnamese place prior to us, and I just sat there for hours sitting and just wondering what I was going to do and how I was going to do it.
Was fear driving some of those thoughts early on, or was it just what I can do with this space and the opportunity?
Oh, there was some fear for sure. There wasn't too much pressure because I didn't have any money.
Yeah.
So I wasn't, at that point,
You couldn't lose anything.
I wasn't, exactly. There was nothing to lose.
Yeah.
But there was fear though, because, I hadn't owned my own business. I don't even think I owned my own car at that point. So it was a big undertaking, but, we had the bones of a restaurant there. There were things that we were able to use. Not a lot, it turned out, but
The idea at that moment when you're sitting there, you're like, oh yeah, we can make this work or that work, and then as you dive in, you're like, oh, okay, that doesn't work, that doesn't work, that won't work. We need this.
Exactly. Yeah. There was a lot of trips to the dump, more than I expected at the start. So Sean and I, we each we applied for new credit cards.
Yeah.
I got a small loan from my parents. Sean got a loan from a friend of his.
Yep.
And we got rolling. We were, again, fortunate. The landlord was amazing and helped out a lot. He lined up all the trades for us.
Yeah, and did a bunch of the work and just
so we had Sean's dad did a lot of work.
Oh, that's right.
Around the restaurant as well, and we got open within 2 months.
Yeah, which I think is a key thing from concept, lease signing to being open. That kind of, you can kill a lot of time, and you're burning through money at the same time. So, getting open, getting some revenue in, and then getting going early helps, because it's going to take you 2 to 3 years before you really get the concept down. So the quicker you can get open, I think, is important.
Exactly. Yeah. And because we had taken over an existing restaurant, we really didn't change anything, so we didn't have to pull permits to get things done, because it was a short enough closure. If we'd been closed, I can't remember what the time like this.
I think it's
6 months or so. Yeah, and then we'd have to have permits to do anything.
Yeah.
We did, like, we again had very little money. I remember the day before we opened, I phoned a friend to borrow maybe $5,000 just to go buy wine inventory. Because we'd spent all our money and I didn't have any money to buy any alcohol or wine for the restaurant. Sean,
that's excellent.
Sean held the calculator, and I would take bottles of wine and say $40, and Sean would be subtracting, from the amount, whatever we had, like $2,000 or something. Yeah, until we got close, and I said, okay, we better stop, because
that'll be it.
That'll be it. And that was our first day. We had the onion soup was served in bowls that my mom lent us.
Oh, that's awesome.
We bought cutlery from Zellers,
Yes.
which was funny because it was a Martha Stewart line that we bought, and of course it comes in settings for 6 people.
Yeah.
And we really liked it, and it was very cheap. But Zellers didn't have a central database. Like, you couldn't go to a Zellers and they'd say, okay, well, the downtown store has
here or whatever.
Yeah, like they would phone another store and say, do you have this line of cutlery? And I was at the customer service desk, and they phoned, the store at Tillicum Mall, and I was at Hillside, or vice versa. And they're like, oh no, we don't have that. And I was like, well, I was just there 5 minutes ago and I know they have it.
Yeah.
So what we ended up doing was phoning our friends, whether they're in Vancouver, Nanaimo, Calgary. We said, can you go to Zellers and please buy this cutlery and send it to us?
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. That's real. That's the epitome of bird dogging a deal and grassroots startup.
The chairs we bought was from a store called Calen in Vancouver. It was like a lifestyle store. But the chairs were on sale on a particular day. So we had a phone on a Thursday, and this is what we used Sean's credit card for, was to buy chairs that got shipped to us the next day. The chairs were so cheap, and they all collapsed eventually.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not without going and screwing them and tightening them up and repainting them.
I tightened them up so much, and all the screws would strip. They were not commercial chairs.
Yeah.
And not one of them lasted.
Oh, I remember when we opened Zambries, IKEA was our friend. We literally bought all of our chairs from IKEA, and they would just split in half, and they would go, oh, throw that one out, bring on a new one. It was easy to get them because they had the same chair for like 3 or 4 years. But
right.
It was, it's so funny if you think about, the standards today versus what we did back then. And considering, the longevity, you guys have been around 18 years. Zambries has just had our 22nd year anniversary. And think about how we got started and where we are. So, I mean, in Brasserie, obviously, your partnership with Sean got everything going, and Sean has exited the business. Obviously, our listeners are in business, hopefully, or planning on going into business. There's partnerships that work. There's partnerships that don't. there's partnerships that work, but maybe there's a bunch of acrimony, or maybe there's just not, you guys aren't talking to each other or whatever. How would you describe that part of the journey as far as, opening and running and then, seeing an exit?
I mean, Sean and I had a great relationship, and we still do. In fact, I think in the years that we were together, which I think would be 20 years this Christmas that we've been open.
Yeah.
I think it was 4 years ago that Sean left.
Right. So
Moved up Island.
2017.
Yeah. So, we worked together for 16 years and we had one argument.
Wow. Was that because you guys weren't talking to each other, or
no? I think we just had
a good fit.
I mean, Sean ran the back of house.
Yeah.
And he got to do what he wanted, really, and I ran the front of the house and I got to do what I wanted. There were probably business decisions that we both made that weren't maybe not in the best for the business.
Yeah.
We maybe could have had a third person overseeing things.
Mm-hmm.
We had financial a bookkeeper and an accountant that would tell us at the end of the year, this is what you got to look out for. But there was probably decisions made on the spur of the moment that maybe could have had some oversight.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of typical in a passion-driven business or industry like the restaurant business. Sean and you were both the artists. I mean, you're on the front end with the wine and sommelier and the hospitality, and Sean on the back end with the technical skills there. But obviously, to be successful, you have to marry that with good business acumen. And it's hard to acquire to be an expert in everything. I don't think anybody is. So I think that is probably one of the best advice you can give anybody doing it, is to try to get somebody you trust, and to bounce the business ideas off. Would you agree?
Definitely. Yes. And we were lucky. We had very good financial advice when we opened. Whether it was the lawyers that we had, or the bookkeeper that we had that came in regularly, and our CPA too, that did our year-end financials.
Yeah, I think it's so key. It can't be understated, for sure.
Exactly. Yes. Especially at the start. I know people that didn't have help at the start and got overwhelmed with the paper aspect of the industry.
Well, and the government remittances and the payroll and the list goes on and on and on, which I think is essential. But you want to make sure that becomes the just kind of rote and just behind the scenes, where it's not taking up the majority of your time, because you and Sean in the days that you guys ran it together really had all of it going. The food was fantastic. The service fantastic. You didn't fight, which I guess probably is what led to that customer's experience. And I can't say enough about how you've operated. What was the fear when Sean left? Like, how were you afraid? Were you looking forward to the opportunity? Like, what?
I mean, financially, it was good because really, at the end of the day, Brasserie Calen is a small restaurant. It's a small business. Even though we're busy, it's not a money-making operation.
Yeah.
I often tell people it's kind of like a corner store.
Yeah.
That the family works at.
Yeah.
I'm there all the time, pretty much.
Yeah.
So there was that part that was like the some financial burden being released.
Yeah.
From because we had talked about having another business, because two of us drawing payroll from the one restaurant was a stress on the restaurant.
Yeah.
And fortunately, with our sous chef Greg, who had already been at the restaurant for 8 or 9 years at that time,
Wow. Yeah.
I knew the kitchen was going to be in good hands.
Yeah.
But then I had to take on all the extra responsibility.
Yeah.
So if there's something breaks down in the kitchen, that was always something Sean dealt with.
Yeah.
And so that was suddenly on my plate, which fortunately has gone well. I've learned a few things about ovens and deep fryers
Yeah,
and
yes,
refrigeration in the
yeah.
last few years. But yeah, I don't think I was nervous so much about it, but I was definitely excited.
Yeah.
Um,
I guess it makes a difference, especially because like you said, I mean, the idea of being in the restaurants, public's perception, I think by and large is it's a money making operation, and there is no money to be made until till you're able to scale, if you can scale. And ideally, you want to provide a decent living for your family, and it's tougher when you've got two principals. But I do think, and that's part of the Bread and Butter Collective's mission is to really improve the fundamentals of the business so that you as an entrepreneur in a restaurant can actually make a living doing what you're doing because you're just trading dollars and you basically end up subsidizing the customer because of the labor costs and the food costs and just how much it costs to actually run a business. So yeah, so hopefully that will improve, as a result of the COVID thing. But yeah, and I think you guys haven't missed a beat sales wise. I don't know that, there was
no,
a
yeah, it's honestly, I mean, last year was hard with the
right.
reduced seating because we had so much spacing in the restaurant. But I mean, our customers were amazing. People were spending more than I
Yes.
think they normally were spending in the restaurant.
Yeah.
Um, and being very generous with tipping the serving staff. It was noticeable last year. But then the public health order last year that said that only single households could dine together, that one really did affect us
Yeah.
because suddenly my tables for four would only ever have two people sitting at them.
Yeah.
And so I'd have a full restaurant, but I'd only be at, less than 50% capacity.
Yeah, which is Zambries was the same way. It was the one time throughout the pandemic where there's no amount of government funding or subsidies or CERB or whatever the rent relief or any of those programs helped. I mean, we were bleeding 15,000 a month during the last 4 month kind of lockdown, and thankfully, like you, we've got a good landlord where we were literally going to close for like 2 months because we just couldn't take the cuts anymore.
We ended up closing for the month of January
Right.
just because it was that slow.
Well, and
And
that's where January and February for us is where we're just like, and we were contemplating closing for March and April, and then thankfully the restrictions did lift.
yeah,
And the thing about it is, it's such a battle because ideally we understand we're in a pandemic and we want to do what's best for the community. And then on the other hand, you're looking at your business and going, wow, we are really taking it on the chin. And, because it is such a passion business for the years leading up to the pandemic, nobody's put money away. Like we're all just kind of, going, hand to mouth and, trading dollars. And I think that's where, again, just to reiterate, the importance of the business making profit as well as covering, your wages and things like that are so, so important, as well as, if you've got if your staff can't eat at your restaurant, there's a problem. So,
yeah.
Supporting staff wages and stuff that's not tips again is another thing because I feel like the tip is a bit of a servitude. And I'd like to bring the professionalism back to our industry, where you can actually make, back in the old days, they used to make, 30, 40 years ago, they used to be able to make a decent profit and it was a, respectable, industry as far as, being a business person. So,
Yes.
I think that's super important for sure. So basically, are you seeing what's your future outlook as far as Brasserie goes? Obviously, you're the single proprietor now for the last 4 years. I think your guys' food is at the top that it's ever been, and it's no slight to Sean. I mean, obviously, Sean is an amazing chef and was an amazing chef, and but the current operation it seems to be going really, really well.
Yeah, it's funny when I opened the restaurant or when we opened the restaurant in 2001, we didn't have a goal then. Like we didn't talk about how long we're going to do this for. part of me thought it might only last 6 months. So, here I am 20 years into it, and I mean, I'm enjoying it. Like I don't, I could see myself doing it for another 10 years. I'm 50 now, so I can definitely, I'm still young.
Yeah. You're still young
Uh,
for sure.
one of the
Fellow
things that we
50-year-old.
did, one of the things we did through this pandemic is changing our operating hours.
Right.
We're only open until 9 o'clock now. We used to be open until 11,
Yeah.
and but I was 30 years old and single
Yeah,
when the
that's
restaurant opened.
right.
So yeah, nine
Have you
o'clock
How are
feels
you
so much more
finding?
reasonable.
Yeah, well, how are you finding that from the customer's experience? Like, do you feel like you're missing anything or
Sometimes on
yeah,
Friday or Saturday night,
yeah,
but very little. I mean, it might be different if we were filled with tourists,
right.
because that's in the past, that's who was
Filled in
coming in
those
for
seats.
dinner, at 10 o'clock at night, where, people from out of town that were, spending the day traveling through the city and having Empress afternoon tea at 3 in the afternoon,
Right.
so they weren't hungry until 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah, that's right. Well, and I think
Uh,
the thing with the most important thing and most, I would say, and correct me if you don't agree, but the locals market is what built our businesses, having that steady local trade, and then the tourist is sort of the cherry on the top component. So I don't have an issue with building your business on what it pays your bills in the day to day, which is the locals, which traditionally do come in a little bit earlier and wouldn't be as affected by a 9 o'clock close. Would you ever consider doing like a 10 o'clock, 10 p.m.?
yeah, I mean, that was our plan. Was, at the end of the summer, is to go till 10 o'clock, at least on Fridays and Saturdays. But we certainly haven't noticed that we're turning away people
Right, and I guess that's the
closing at
other
9.
thing too. I mean, even when Zambries pivoted, we decided not to open during the day for lunch, and lunch was one of our bigger things. But when we looked at the actual labor and then the return, we basically were either breaking even or losing money during lunch. Now we're open 5 to 9 during the week, and I think we're open to 5 to 10 on Friday and Saturdays. And our sales pre-pandemic, we're above the sales pre-pandemic, open 5 days a week and close lunch. And the bottom line obviously is super improved by that. When you're looking at labor, the labor crisis right now is a real thing. So that would probably dictate some of your opening hours and decisions around that too,
Well, yeah,
right?
that's it. It's we're paying a lot more to our employees than what we did, a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
And so that extra hour or two would be probably harmful to the business overall.
Well, and especially if the business isn't there, like I think you get handcuffed with the idea that you're going to cater to a certain segment of your customers. So you might have 10 people that come, once a month that are mad that you're closed at 9 or that you would close at 10 if you did that, but
Exactly.
because they want you there at 10:05 or 10:10. But guess what? You're not paying my bills, and if you come 2 or 3 times a month, maybe then it starts making sense.
Exactly.
It's the idea that we're there just to serve rather than try to run a business and make it make sense. I think that's what's lost to some degree. Have you had to raise your prices at all?
Yes, we did last summer a little bit,
Yeah.
and then we did again this spring when we opened after the circuit breaker
Yeah.
shutdown. Um, and just I didn't change my alcohol prices. The drink prices stayed
Yeah.
the same because, of course, we got wholesale pricing from the liquor
Right.
board finally,
Yes.
and so I
Finally.
didn't feel that I needed to increase my drink prices. But yeah, the food prices did go up.
Yeah, and I think the supply chain of that is relatively a little bit shaky. So I mean, I know with beef, I mean you're obviously a steak is a big part of what you sell, and beef prices have been all over the map when it comes to the supplier. So I think that's. Have you had any pushback from the customers on the pricing? I think.
No,
Yeah.
no, not at all.
So you probably should do another price increase, I would say.
Probably, yeah.
You want to take it to the point where the customer's a little annoyed?
Until you hear some noise, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you mentioned beef. We've been seeing it with the cooking oil,
Right.
which is it's amazing. Just how much oil we might go through.
Oh, it's actually insane. I mean, we're fry business.
Of course, yeah. With your place, you'd probably notice it even more.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I mean, there's things that the temperature. We've learned some stuff over COVID that we're running our fryers at 380 when we should be running them at 350. So there's certain like self stabs. Like we've kind of, we've kind of hurt ourselves rather than as a result of the pandemic. But I think that's one of the things that has allowed us to be free to be really super critical of what we've done and try to think things different and go, well, how can we make it better? And I think that's part of our obligation. I think our obligation is to provide good food, good service, good, at a fair price. And I think that we need to really recognize what a fair price is for ourselves, but also for our customer, because we won't be having independent restaurants if we don't fix it. And,
right.
Because of the nature of, prices are usually sticky downwards. So, when you think, oh, well, beef prices will go down in 3 months or 2 months, so we'll just keep the price there. Meanwhile, they don't go down, they go up. And then you're just, really cutting into whatever margin's left. And, I think that is where we as an industry should really be talking about customer awareness on just the realities of what owning a restaurant is. And otherwise, we're going to be left with, these box store restaurant chains that, can survive and thrive because they have the scale, but an independent can't for the reasons that, we all know in the industry, but, having our customers understand that a little bit. So I think that's a really good lesson for restaurateurs and people in business in general is, like charge a fair price, but make sure that you're being fair to yourself too. And your staff, of course. You can't just keep all the profits yourself.
Right.
I'd like to, but it doesn't operate that. Is there anything else you want to share about your business with our listeners, or any cool things you're going to be doing in the future, like personal?
No. We might be open for New Year's Eve for the first time since 2001.
God. And are you selling tickets?
Oh, well, I don't know how we're going to go about it yet. It was a very recent decision.
Oh my God. Okay. Well, I would like to get booked in there.
Okay.
100%. That would be amazing. I mean, I remember the day. I remember when your opening day, and I remember I stopped doing this, but I remember I was like, Mark, give me your best wine, or give me your best value wine, or whatever. And my wine bill at the end of the night was like $600 or something. And I was like, God, I did it to myself. But it was amazing. I mean, I'm so proud to have been a part of your guys' journey and, been a patron for all those years. And looking forward to being a patron for the next 10 years. And it is when I look back, because I've been in the business, we just had our 22nd year anniversary. I understand how hard it is to survive 20 years in any industry. So hats off to you and your team and everybody there, because you have an amazing operation. It's Brasserie on Government Street in Victoria, BC. Institution. They're open Tuesday to Saturday, 5 to 9.
5:30 to
9. But get in line. I think you can start waiting in line about 5 to 5:15 to get a table. And Mark, when did I meet you?
Well, I mean, I think we would have met at the old London Drug Zambries.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's for sure. We were going back and forth to Brasserie de Cole too.
Yeah.
But we were also involved in a soccer league.
Right. So in 2002, just after the restaurant had opened, I realized I wasn't exercising. I wasn't going to be the cyclist anymore.
Yeah.
And so we decided to kick a soccer ball around. So Sean, myself, one of my staff, James Hillman, and Daniele Meru.
Oh yeah, Daniele.
We got together on a Sunday morning, and we kicked a soccer ball around. I think we went to Margaret Jenkins Elementary. And it was just the four of us, and we got pretty bored after a half an hour kicking the ball around. So we spent the week recruiting some more people, and we hit up the staff from Il Terrazzo, Zambres, and some people from Butchart Gardens and the Airy.
Right.
And we started having a restaurant kick around on Sunday mornings, and then we had some hotel people come out. And so we called it a restaurant and hotel league for a while. And we'd move around from different fields. But then we started getting in trouble from the city for not having a permit. And but the city's regulations were that pickup games didn't need a permit. But the city worker that kept seeing us on Sunday said we were too organized.
And we were pretty organized
to be a pickup game. And so we had to start booking a field. And to book a field, we had to have insurance. And so to get insurance, we had to have a bank account. So we formed a company. We called it the Sunday Premier League, or SPL. And we got insurance, and we started booking fields. And in fact, we used to hire referees for our terrible quality games.
Listen, the games were good. Never mind. We were all getting old, but
2-3 years into it, we had all these sponsors, because it was, I think, partially because it was all these restaurant people involved in this game. That I remember those first kits. We had red jerseys and blue jerseys, and they were sponsored by Hugarten or Stella. There was a wine shop sponsor, hair products.
Yeah. Brasserie, Zambres.
We had all these different sponsors, and we had these awesome kits. So that started in 2002, and that pickup game is still running today, or in the summer months, anyways.
It's so incredible. I mean, that's how I got the nickname Big Wheel. Being a striker and doing a big tumble. And then I think it was Stacy Kuyak that started singing Proud Mary, keep on turning, Big Wheel, keep on rolling. And then Bill Jones piped in, Big Wheel McNeil. And then I was called Big Wheel ever since then, which the name is what created the burger joint.
Right.
Because it was a good name for a burger joint, which is incredible.
Most of my friends have come through that soccer game, soccer league or pickup game.
Agreed. I mean, some of our closest friends, and we play some home game poker. We have dinners, and when the World Cup is on, we all assemble at one of our restaurants or businesses and watch it. And it's been such a great organization, and a testament to how connected we are because of the business we do. I mean, it feels like we've all been to war together, and that collaboration, and then to be able to have that recreational sport outside just kind of polishes it all off.
Well, you mentioned the name Stacy Kuyak.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how I got to know him, is that he was a customer in the restaurant, and for whatever reason, soccer was mentioned, and he's like, "Oh, I play soccer. I'm a goalie." And at that point, we'd only been playing with pylons.
Yeah, that's right.
Like traffic cones as posts.
Yeah.
And so then all of a sudden we were playing with one full size net.
Oh, it's just amazing.
Yeah.
Well, it's been that's one of my. I mean, I've got arthritic knee and knee problem, but my soccer career is kind of over. But I live vicariously through the SBL, and having been a member of that organization for almost 20 years is pretty amazing. But yeah, thanks, Marc, for joining us.
Thank you very much. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, love it. And we'll see you soon.
Cheers.
All right, cheers. And that will do this podcast. I'd like to thank all our listeners. I'd like to thank Big Wheel Burger for sponsorship. I'd like to thank all the members of the Bread and Butter Collective. I believe that will come in a thread. And be kind. Remember, be kind, and take care of yourselves. And we'll talk to you in the next show.
Bread and Butter Collective's membership includes the following local businesses: 2% Jazz, 900 Degrees Wood-Fired Pizzeria, Agrius, Big Wheel Burger, Blue Mountain Solutions, Bodega Tapas Wine Bar, Brentwood Bay Village Emporium, Nourish and Charlotte the Quail, Victoria Chocolate and Company, Drum Roaster Coffee, Habit Coffee, Foo Asian Street Food, the Culinary Arts Program at Camosun, Cafe Fantastico, Fall Epi, Harold Street Brewworks, Hey Happy, House of Botang, Hoyne Brewing, Jenny Marie's Cracker Company, La Pasta, La Rue Patisserie, Mocha House, Part and Parcel, Poco a Pinto Bar, Pizzeria Prima Strada, Rain Dogs, Roast, Table 9 Consulting, Sherwood Cafe and Bar, Sweets by Selena, The Collective Wine Bar and Kitchen, The Drake, Tapa Bar, Taco Stand Al Pastor, Toque, The Whole Beast, The Wienery, and Zambries.
To hear more from the Bread and Butter Collective, go to checknews.ca/podcasts on Check Plus, or find us on your favorite podcasting platform.